Welcome to Global Byte. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. On a Monday in late 2025, the United States Supreme Court delivered a decision that sent shockwaves across the country. In a 6-3 split, the court allowed the Trump administration to resume controversial immigration patrol tactics previously blocked by lower courts. This ruling immediately affected at least 600,000 people, touching countless families and communities. At the heart of the case, roving patrols, where ICE and Border Patrol agents can stop and question anyone they suspect of being in the country unlawfully. Lower courts had found these patrols often relied on appearance, language, or perceived occupation. Criteria critics say amount to unconstitutional racial profiling. The Supreme Court's order puts those concerns on hold, letting the patrols continue while the case proceeds. The decision has ignited a fierce national debate about security versus civil liberties and what it means to be protected under the law. For many, especially within Latino and immigrant communities, the ruling feels like a direct assault on their rights and sense of belonging. The timing, September 8, 2025, came amid heightened tensions over immigration policy and expanded ICE raids in major cities. As the country grapples with the aftermath, the stories of those impacted are just beginning to emerge, painting a picture of a community on edge. Immigration patrols have a long and contentious history in the U.S. Federal agents have enforced immigration laws not just at the border, but deep within the country, under the authority of the Immigration and Nationality Act. Lawsuits have repeatedly challenged these practices, arguing the agents disproportionately target people of Latino descent. In a landmark Los Angeles case, courts found that stops based on race or language violated the Fourth and Fifth Amendments. These victories placed limits on immigration agents and aimed to protect communities from discriminatory policing. The Vasquez-Perdomo versus Noem case followed this pattern, with advocacy groups successfully blocking roving patrols in lower courts. The Trump administration, however, argued these restrictions hampered enforcement and appealed all the way to the Supreme Court. They filed an emergency request to lift the ban on patrols, setting the stage for a major constitutional showdown. The stakes, whether federal agents can use broad discretion, including appearance and language, in immigration stops. This legal battle is rooted in decades of conflict over the balance between enforcement and civil rights. The Supreme Court's intervention marks a turning point with profound consequences for millions. The Supreme Court's emergency order wasn't a final ruling, but its impact was immediate. By a 6-3 vote, the court lifted lower court injunctions, allowing ICE and Border Patrol to resume roving patrols nationwide. Agents can now use a wide range of factors, including race and ethnicity, to stop and question individuals. This affects not just undocumented immigrants, but also lawful residents and U.S. citizens, especially those of Latino descent. The decision expands immigration enforcement far beyond the border, creating a new reality in cities like Chicago and Los Angeles. The majority offered no detailed explanation, but the dissent, led by Justice Sotomayor, warned of the risks of legitimizing discrimination. She argued the ruling could turn Latinos into second-class citizens, targeted for their appearance and perceived status. The order is temporary, but widely seen as a signal of how the court's conservative majority may ultimately rule. For those affected, the threat of being stopped or detained based on appearance is now a daily reality. The legal fight isn't over, but the immediate danger is real and present. Communities must now navigate a landscape where suspicion alone can trigger life-altering consequences. The nation waits for a final decision, but the impact is already being felt. The Supreme Court's brief order reflected a familiar legal stance: deference to executive power in immigration. The majority sided with the Trump administration's claim that lower court rulings handicapped law enforcement. The government argued agents need broad discretion to identify those in the country unlawfully, relying on training and experience. Historically, the court has granted the executive branch significant leeway in national security and immigration matters. The majority signaled reluctance to let judges micromanage ICE and Border Patrol, even when constitutional rights are at stake. Administration lawyers insisted that race or ethnicity is never the sole factor, but part of a broader assessment. The court's decision allows this controversial, holistic approach to continue. The 6-3 split reflects a philosophy that prioritizes federal power in immigration and skepticism of judicial limits on executive authority. The majority viewed the lower court's order as judicial overreach, restoring the administration's enforcement policies for now. This approach places national enforcement above immediate claims of harm, deepening the ideological divide on the court. Justice Sonia Sotomayor's dissent was a passionate rebuke of the majority's decision. She argued the ruling was not just procedural, but a grave error with devastating human consequences. Her dissent gave voice to millions who felt targeted, translating fear into constitutional language. Sotomayor's most quoted line, "We should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low-wage job." She accused the majority of paving the way for a society with different classes of citizenship. The dissent focused on equal protection, arguing that stops based on race are inherently unreasonable and unconstitutional. By allowing patrols to resume, she said, the court was ignoring its own precedents and undermining fundamental protections. Her writing was a reminder of the judiciary's role in protecting minorities from government overreach. Sotomayor warned the order would inflict irreparable harm long before a final decision is reached. Her words stand as a solemn warning about the character of the nation and its commitment to equality. The Supreme Court's decision triggered immediate fear in cities with large Latino and immigrant populations. Everyday routines, work, school, shopping, suddenly felt risky, driving many deeper into the shadows. Community events saw sharp drops in attendance as families feared gatherings would attract immigration agents. The ruling discouraged participation in public life, isolating individuals and weakening community bonds. Trust in local authorities and public institutions eroded, as people feared any interaction could lead to detention or deportation. This climate of fear made communities less safe, as crimes went unreported and health needs unmet. The psychological toll was immense. Parents feared separation from their children. Workers dreaded routine stops. Chronic stress and anxiety became daily realities, with well-documented effects on mental and physical health. The decision imposed a heavy emotional burden, forcing hundreds of thousands to live with constant uncertainty. The legal shift became a human crisis, reshaping lives across the country. The Supreme Court's ruling brought economic instability, especially in industries reliant on immigrant labor. Fear of detention created uncertainty for workers and employers, disrupting business operations and local economies. Workers, afraid to speak out, became more vulnerable to exploitation and unsafe conditions. This shadow economy drove down wages and protections for all workers in affected sectors. Consumer spending dropped as people avoided public places and large purchases, hurting small businesses and slowing local growth. The ruling became an economic depressant, not just a social issue. Businesses faced new costs, labor shortages, increased scrutiny, and legal challenges. Planning for the future became difficult in this unpredictable environment. The Vasquez-Perdomo versus Noem decision showed how immigration policy and economic health are deeply intertwined. The financial consequences ripple far beyond the courtroom, affecting entire communities. Legal experts see the Vasquez-Perdomo versus Noem ruling as a major shift in immigration law. Professor Hiroshi Motomura of UCLA calls the order highly alarming, signaling a new era of deference to executive enforcement. The court's move gives federal agents broad power, prioritizing enforcement over the documented harms of racial profiling. This decision fits a larger pattern of aggressive immigration actions, including expanded ICE raids and secretive enforcement policies. The number of people in civil immigration detention has already surged, and this ruling is likely to increase it further. Experts warn the legal fight is far from over, but the 6-3 split suggests a long-term reality where these patrols remain. Civil rights groups are now redoubling efforts in Congress and public debate, preparing for a protracted struggle. The Supreme Court's 6-3 decision has set the nation on a precarious path, legitimizing fear and deepening divisions. The consequences are real: hundreds of thousands affected, community life chilled, and economic instability spreading. The decision temporarily overturns bans on racial profiling and immigration stops, with Justice Sotomayor warning of second-class citizens. This moment demands reflection on the kind of country we want to be. The issue transcends politics, raising questions about security, freedom, and equality. The path forward requires engagement, listening to those affected, learning the legal and human stakes, and participating in democracy. The Supreme Court has spoken, but the final word will come from ongoing legal battles and public action. This decision is a game changer, challenging us all to decide what kind of nation we will become.